The morning fog hung thick over the highway as Daniel Foster gripped the steering wheel of his old sedan, fighting to keep his eyes open. He'd worked a double shift at the manufacturing plant, covering for a sick colleague, and now exhaustion pulled at him like a physical weight. In the back seat, his 7-year-old daughter Emma hummed quietly to herself, coloring in her princess book. "Daddy, are we almost at Aunt Rachel's house?" Emma asked, her voice bright despite the early hour. "Just 20 more minutes, princess," Daniel replied, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Her dark curls bounced as she nodded, returning to her coloring with the focus only children possess. Daniel's mind wandered to the bills piling up on his kitchen counter. The rent was due in 3 days, and he was still short $200. Since his wife Jennifer had passed away from complications during Emma's birth, every day had been a battle to stay afloat. He worked as many hours as the plant would give him, but it never seemed like enough. The fog began to lift as they drove, revealing the winding mountain road ahead. That's when Daniel saw it. A flash of red through the trees, then the unmistakable sound of metal crunching against rock. The car had gone off the road, tumbling down the embankment. His foot hit the brake instinctively. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Emma's voice was suddenly worried. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. He could see smoke rising from where the vehicle had crashed. Every logical part of his brain screamed at him to keep driving. He was already late. He had Emma in the car. Getting involved could mean police reports, hospital visits, complications he couldn't afford. But then he thought of Jennifer, of how she'd always stop to help anyone who needed it. "We help because we can," she used to say. That's reason enough. Daniel pulled onto the shoulder and turned on his hazard lights. "Emma, I need you to stay in the car and lock the doors. Okay? Can you be brave for me?" Emma's eyes went wide, but she nodded. "Are you going to help someone?" "Yes, baby. Just like Mommy would have." Daniel grabbed his phone and dialed emergency services as he ran toward the crash site, his legs burning as he half slid down the steep embankment. The operator's voice crackled through as he gave their location, but Daniel barely heard his own responses. All he could focus on was the overturned luxury sedan, driver's side crumpled against a boulder, smoke beginning to thicken. When he reached the vehicle, Daniel's stomach dropped. A woman was trapped inside, unconscious, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead. The driver's door was crushed shut, but the passenger side was accessible, if he could get to it before the smoke turned to flames. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Daniel shouted, but there was no response. He could smell gasoline now, sharp and dangerous. His hands shook as he yanked on the passenger door. It was stuck. He pulled harder, his muscles screaming, and finally it gave way with a groan of metal. Daniel climbed inside, glass crunching beneath his knees. The woman was wearing expensive clothes and jewelry. Clearly someone important, he thought absently. But that didn't matter now. What mattered was getting her out. He checked for a pulse. It was there, weak but steady. Relief flooded through him for just a moment before reality crashed back. The smoke was getting worse, and he could hear a hissing sound from the engine that made his blood run cold. Okay, you're going to be fine," Daniel muttered, more to himself than to the unconscious woman. He carefully released her seatbelt, supporting her head and neck as best he could. She was heavier than she looked, dead weight in his arms, and the angle was all wrong. He had to twist sideways, dragging her toward him while trying not to hurt her further. His back screamed in protest. His shoulders felt like they might dislocate. But he kept pulling, inch by agonizing inch, until finally they were both clear of the passenger door. Getting down the rest of the embankment with her was even harder. Daniel half carried, half dragged her, his feet slipping on loose gravel. At one point he fell, landing hard on his hip, but he never let go of her. He couldn't. If he let go, she might slide further down, and he didn't have the strength to climb back up for her. By the time he reached flat ground, Daniel could barely breathe. He laid the woman down gently, checking her pulse again. Still there, still alive. The sound of the explosion made him jump. He looked back to see the car engulfed in flames, black smoke billowing into the morning sky. If he'd been 30 seconds slower... "Daddy!" Emma's voice cut through his shock. She was standing by their car, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy, are you okay?" Daniel staggered to his feet and ran to her, pulling her into a fierce hug. "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay. You were so brave. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like the video. Your comment means more than you think. It inspires me to keep creating stories that heal, teach, and move people." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Within minutes, emergency vehicles surrounded them. Paramedics rushed to the injured woman, their movements efficient and practiced. One of them, a young man with kind eyes, approached Daniel. "Sir, you saved her life. That car went up like a matchstick. Another minute and..." He shook his head. "You're a hero." Daniel didn't feel like a hero. He felt exhausted, his body aching in places he didn't know could ache. But when he looked down at Emma, saw the pride shining in her eyes, something warm spread through his chest. "My daddy saved her," Emma announced to anyone who would listen. Just like a superhero. A police officer took Daniel's statement, then insisted he get checked out by the paramedics. Nothing was broken, but he'd have bruises for weeks. As they were finally preparing to leave, another officer approached. "Mr. Foster? The woman you saved. Do you know who she is?" Daniel shook his head. "No idea. Is she going to be okay?" "Doctors are optimistic, but you should know that's Victoria Montgomery. She's the CEO of Montgomery Tech Industries, one of the biggest companies in the state. Her father's Richard Montgomery." The name meant nothing to Daniel. He didn't run in those circles, but he nodded politely. "I'm glad she'll be all right. Can we go now? My daughter needs to get to her aunt's house." The officer looked at him strangely, like he couldn't quite believe Daniel didn't care about Victoria Montgomery's identity. "Of course. We'll be in touch if we need anything else." As Daniel drove away, Emma finally fell asleep in the back seat, emotionally exhausted. He glanced at her in the mirror, his heart swelling with love. She looked so much like Jennifer it hurt sometimes. But in moments like this, the resemblance was a comfort rather than a pain. 3 days passed before anything unusual happened. Daniel had almost forgotten about the accident, caught up in the daily grind of work and parenting. Then a black town car pulled up outside his apartment building, and a man in an expensive suit knocked on his door. "Daniel Foster?" the man asked. "That's me. Can I help you? My name is Richard Montgomery. I believe you saved my daughter's life." Daniel's eyes widened. He'd looked up Montgomery Tech after the accident and realized just how wealthy and powerful this family was. And now the patriarch was standing in his doorway. "Please come in," Daniel said, suddenly very aware of how shabby his apartment looked. "Sorry about the mess. My daughter and I..." "You have a daughter?" Richard interrupted, his stern expression softening slightly. "Yes, Emma. She's 7. She was with you that morning, I understand. That must have been frightening for her. Daniel nodded. She was brave, though. Braver than I would have been at her age. Richard stepped inside, his eyes scanning the small space. Daniel saw him take in the second-hand furniture. The toys scattered across the floor. The stack of past-due notices on the kitchen table that Daniel hadn't had time to hide. Mr. Foster, my daughter is awake. She's been asking to meet you. Would you be willing to visit her at the hospital? I have a car waiting. Daniel glanced at the clock. I have to pick Emma up from school in an hour. We can arrange for someone to pick her up and bring her to the hospital if you'd like. I think Victoria would enjoy meeting her as well. Something in Richard's voice suggested this wasn't really a request. Daniel found himself nodding. The hospital room was private, more like a hotel suite than a medical facility. Victoria Montgomery sat propped up in bed, bandages covering the left side of her head, her arm in a cast. Despite the injuries, Daniel could see she was beautiful. Striking features, intelligent eyes that seemed to catalog everything about him in seconds. Mr. Foster, she said, her voice hoarse. Please sit down. Daniel sat in the chair beside her bed, suddenly nervous. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, which I suppose is fairly accurate. She smiled weakly. My father tells me you pulled me from a burning car. I don't remember any of it. That's probably for the best. It wasn't pretty. Why did you stop? The question was direct, curious rather than accusatory. Daniel thought about it. Because someone needed help and I could help them. My wife always said that was reason enough. Your wife sounds like a wise woman. She was. She passed away 7 years ago. I'm sorry. Victoria's expression shifted, genuine sympathy in her eyes. That must be difficult, raising a daughter alone. We manage. They talked for a while longer, conversation flowing more easily than Daniel expected. Victoria was sharp, funny despite her injuries, and genuinely interested in his life. When Richard returned with Emma, Victoria's whole face lit up. You must be Emma. Your daddy told me how brave you were. Emma approached the bed shyly. Are you okay? You were really hurt. I'm much better now, thanks to your dad. He's a real hero. Emma beamed. I know. He's the best daddy in the whole world. As they were leaving, Richard pulled Daniel aside. Mr. Foster, I'd like to discuss something with you. Victoria will need physical therapy, help during her recovery. She lives alone, and I'd feel better if someone was looking after her. Someone trustworthy. Would you consider a temporary position as her assistant? The pay would be substantial. Daniel's pride bristled. I'm not looking for charity, Mr. Montgomery. This isn't charity. It's employment. Victoria needs help, and I trust you. More importantly, she likes you, which is rare. She's quite particular about people. Daniel thought about his bills, about the opportunities he could give Emma with better pay. But more than that, he thought about Victoria's smile, the way she'd lit up when she met Emma. What would the job entail exactly? Over the next 2 months, Daniel's life transformed in ways he never imagined. He worked mornings at the plant, then spent afternoons helping Victoria, driving her to physical therapy appointments, managing her schedule, ensuring she didn't overdo it during recovery. Richard had been generous with the salary, enough that Daniel could finally breathe financially. But more than the money, something else was growing. Friendship first, built on long conversations during therapy visits, shared meals at Victoria's penthouse apartment, Emma doing homework at Victoria's kitchen table while the adults talked. Tell me about Jennifer. Victoria said one evening. Watching Daniel help Emma with her math homework, Daniel tensed. He didn't talk about Jennifer often. It hurt too much. I'm sorry, Victoria added quickly. You don't have to. No, it's okay. Daniel set down his coffee cup. She was everything. Smart, kind, always seeing the best in people. She wanted to be a teacher. We were so excited when Emma was coming. His voice broke slightly. There were complications during delivery. The doctors tried everything, but she made me promise to make sure Emma knew how much she was loved. I think about that promise every day. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Emma knows. Anyone can see how much you love her. Jennifer would be proud of the father you've become. The touch lingered a moment too long. Both of them pulled back, suddenly aware of a shift in the air between them. Emma looked up from her homework, a knowing smile on her 7-year-old face. Miss Victoria, do you like my daddy? Emma. Daniel's face burned, but Victoria laughed. I do like your daddy very much. He's a good man. He's the best, Emma agreed. Then, with the bluntness only children possess, are you going to be my new mommy? The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel wanted to sink through the floor. Emma, that's not. People don't just. I think, Victoria said carefully, her eyes meeting Daniel's, that your daddy and I are friends right now. But I like being your friend too. Emma, is that okay? Emma considered this seriously. I guess so. But if you ever want to be more than friends, that would be okay too. Daddy gets lonely sometimes. I hear him crying at night when he thinks I'm asleep. Daniel's throat tightened. He thought he'd been so careful, so good at hiding his grief from Emma. Later, after Emma had gone to sleep on Victoria's guest room bed, something that had become a regular occurrence, Daniel and Victoria sat on her balcony. The city lights spread before them. I'm sorry about earlier, Daniel said. Emma doesn't have a filter. Don't apologize. She's honest. It's refreshing. Victoria paused. Is it true that you still cry at night? Daniel looked down at his hands. Sometimes. It's been 7 years, and I thought I'd be past it by now. But grief doesn't work on a schedule. No, it doesn't. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I was engaged once. His name was Marcus. He died in a car accident 3 years ago. I was driving. I survived, he didn't. Her voice was barely a whisper. I haven't been able to be in a car since without having panic attacks. That's why my accident was so bad. I was driving for the first time in years, trying to prove to myself I could do it. And look how that turned out. Daniel turned to her, seeing her in a new light. Victoria, it wasn't your fault. The police report said another driver ran a red light. I know. Logically, I know. But logic doesn't always help with guilt. She met his eyes. You understand that, don't you? The guilt of surviving when someone you love didn't. Every single day, they sat in comfortable silence, two broken people recognizing each other's wounds. And in that recognition, something began to heal. The relationship developed slowly, carefully. Neither of them rushed it. Daniel was terrified of betraying Jennifer's memory. Victoria was afraid of getting hurt again. But Emma, with her 7-year-old wisdom, seemed to understand better than either of them what they needed. Miss Victoria makes you smile, Daddy, she observed one day. Like in the old pictures with Mommy. Is that okay with you? Daniel asked, his heart in his throat. Emma thought about it seriously. Mommy's in heaven, right? Right? And heaven is a happy place? That's what they say. Then I think Mommy would want you to be happy too. And Miss Victoria makes you happy. So yes, it's okay. The wisdom of children, Daniel thought, never ceased to amaze him. 6 months after the accident, Victoria was fully recovered. She'd returned to running Montgomery Tech, but she made sure to keep her evenings free for Daniel and Emma. They'd fallen into a routine. Dinner together 3 times a week, weekend outings to museums or parks, lazy Sunday mornings at Victoria's apartment. It was on one of those Sunday mornings that Richard Montgomery dropped by unexpectedly. "Dad!" Victoria exclaimed, opening the door. "What are you doing here?" Richard's eyes took in the scene. Daniel making pancakes in the kitchen, Emma setting the table, Victoria in casual clothes with flour on her nose. A smile tugged at his lips. "I wanted to discuss a business matter with you, Victoria, but I can see you're busy. Join us for breakfast," Daniel offered before he could stop himself. "There's plenty." Richard hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." As they ate, Richard watched his daughter with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. Victoria was different. Lighter, happier than Daniel had ever seen her. She laughed at Emma's knock-knock jokes, teased Daniel about his pancake flipping skills, looked utterly at peace. After breakfast, while Emma showed Victoria her latest school art project, Richard pulled Daniel aside. "You're good for her," Richard said simply. "I haven't seen her this happy since before Marcus died. You've given my daughter back her life, Mr. Foster, and not just by pulling her from that car." Daniel didn't know what to say. "I care about her, sir. A lot. I can see that. And she cares about you." Richard paused. "I'm not an easy man, Mr. Foster. I built my company from nothing, and I'm protective of what's mine, especially my daughter. But I can see you're a good man. You make her happy, and that's all that matters to me." "Thank you, sir." "Richard. Call me Richard. We're family now, aren't we?" The proposal came 6 months later, on the anniversary of the accident. Daniel had planned it carefully, with Emma's enthusiastic help. They'd gone back to the spot where the accident happened. Victoria had never returned, too traumatized by what had happened there. "Why are we here?" Victoria asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "Because," Daniel said, taking her hand, "this is where my life changed. This is where I met the woman who would become my best friend, my partner, the person I want to spend the rest of my life with." Victoria's eyes widened as Daniel dropped to one knee, Emma bouncing excitedly beside him. "Victoria Montgomery, will you marry me?" Victoria looked from Daniel to Emma, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Emma cheered, throwing her arms around both of them. "We're going to be a real family." "We already are," Victoria said, pulling Emma close. "We've been a family for a while now, sweetheart." The wedding was simple, intimate, just close friends and family in Richard's garden. Emma served as flower girl, taking her role very seriously. As Victoria walked down the aisle on her father's arm, Daniel felt his eyes burning with tears. Jennifer would have liked her, he thought. She would have wanted this for us. And in that moment, he swore he felt a gentle breeze, like a whisper of approval from heaven. 5 years later, Daniel stood in the kitchen of the home he shared with Victoria and Emma, now 12, watching her help her younger brother Benjamin with his homework. Victoria was on a work call in her office, her voice carrying through the house with the authority of someone who'd reclaimed her confidence. "Dad," Emma said, looking up from explaining long division to Ben, "we have that career day thing at school next week. Can you come? I want to tell everyone how you're a hero." Daniel smiled. He'd left the manufacturing plant years ago, now working as Montgomery Tech's Director of Community Outreach, a position Victoria had created specifically for him. He coordinated charitable programs, disaster relief efforts, and worked with other companies to develop better employee support systems. "I'm not a hero, Em. I just did what anyone would do." "That's not true," Victoria said, appearing in the doorway. Her call must have finished. "Most people would have driven past. You stopped. You risked everything for a stranger. That's the definition of heroism." "I got you out of it," Daniel said, wrapping his arms around her waist. "That makes me the luckiest man alive. Not a hero. Can't it be both?" Emma asked with teenage wisdom. As the family gathered around the dinner table that evening, Daniel, Victoria, Emma, Benjamin, and Richard, who'd become a constant presence in their lives. Daniel thought about that foggy morning 5 years ago, the split-second decision that had changed everything. He'd risked 30 seconds of his life to save a stranger, and that stranger had saved him right back. Later that night, after the kids were in bed and Victoria had fallen asleep beside him, Daniel stood at the window looking out at the stars. He pulled out the old photograph he still kept in his wallet. Jennifer, young and radiant, laughing at something just off camera. "Thank you," he whispered to her memory, "for teaching me to help others, for giving me Emma, for loving me enough that I could learn to love again." The stars seemed to twinkle a little brighter, and Daniel smiled. He knew Jennifer would approve of the life he'd built, the family he'd found, the happiness he'd discovered in the most unexpected place. Because sometimes saving someone's life is just the beginning. Sometimes the real story starts when two wounded hearts find each other and realize they're stronger together than apart. And sometimes a 7-year-old girl knows exactly what her daddy needs, even when he's too scared to admit it. Daniel Foster had learned that true courage isn't about big, dramatic gestures. It's about showing up when it matters, even when it's inconvenient. It's about choosing compassion over comfort, love over fear. It's about taking 30 seconds to help someone, not knowing that those 30 seconds will ripple out into years of joy, healing, and unexpected grace. As he climbed back into bed beside Victoria, pulling her close, Daniel closed his eyes with a heart full of gratitude. He'd taken a chance on a foggy morning, and that chance had given him everything he never knew he needed. And in the end, that's what heroes do. They don't think about the cost or the consequences. They just act, trusting that doing the right thing is always worth it, no matter where it leads. Remember, your moment of courage is waiting. Don't drive past it, because the stranger you save today might become the family you love tomorrow.